Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are going to try and demystify one of the biggest buzzwords in tech, Web3. But we're not just going to talk about hype. We're going to break down why this is such a massive shift, especially for developers, and what we really mean when we call it a back-end revolution. So, let's dive in. All right, but first, let me just ask you something, and it's a big one. Do you really own your data? I mean, think about it. Your photos, your messages, your entire online identity. Where does all that stuff actually live? And maybe more importantly, who's really in control of it? You know, that question really gets to the heart of this pretty bold statement. The internet we use every day is, in some pretty basic ways, broken. Every time you're online, little copies of your data, they get sent off to these massive servers. And guess what? Those servers are owned and controlled by just a handful of giant tech companies. So you don't own that data, they do. And that right there is the fundamental problem that Web3 is trying to solve. This isn't just, a simple update. We're talking about a whole new foundation for the internet built on a totally different set of rules. Okay, so this slide is really interesting because it frames the whole thing perfectly. So think about Web 2, right? The internet, of social media, all these interactive apps, that was a front-end revolution. It was all about how websites looked and felt. But Web 3? Totally different beast. This is a back-end revolution. We're talking about rebuilding the deep-down infrastructure, the servers, the databases, all that digital plumbing that makes everything else work.
So, okay, what does this new foundation actually look like? Well, it's built on these 4 key principles. First, it's verifiable. That just means anyone can check the rules and see the transactions. It's self-governing, so it's run by a community of users, not some big company. It's permissionless, which is huge. Anyone can jump in and build on it. And finally, it has payments baked right in. You see the theme here, right? It's all about decentralization.
And this is where the money part gets really interesting. In the Web 2 world, all the value you create, it goes straight to the platform, to the company. But in Web 3, that value, the rewards for doing the work, for running the computers, keeping things secure, it goes directly to the people in the network. The folks who actually make the ecosystem run are the ones who get the rewards. It's a total flip.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the why. Now let's dig into the how. Let's actually look at the blueprints and see what makes the architecture of Web3 so different from the internet we're all used to. Okay, this diagram right here, this should look super familiar to pretty much everyone. This is Web 2, classic stuff. Your browser talks to one central web server, and that server is the boss. It runs all the code and controls a private database where every bit of data is stored. Sure, it's efficient, but it's also a single point of control and a single point of failure. All right, now look at the Web 3 model. The difference is just huge. You notice something missing? Yeah, the central server and the private database are completely gone. What's in their place? A decentralized network of computers. We call them nodes. And the app's logic? It's not locked away on some private server anymore. Nope, it's out there in the open, running as transparent smart contracts on a public blockchain like Ethereum. I mean, this picture right here is the back-end revolution we've been talking about.
Okay, so if you're a developer and you're thinking, I want to build on this, what does your toolkit even look like? Let's break down the stack, the layers of tech you'd actually be using, and we'll focus on Ethereum.
The easiest way to think about it is like a 5-layer cake. Seriously. At the very bottom, you've got the Ethereum virtual machine, the EVM. That's kind of like the global brain that runs everything. Then, on top of that, you write your smart contracts. So where do those contracts run? They run on Ethereum nodes, which are just all the different computers in the network. As a developer, you use what are called client APIs to talk to those nodes. And then, way up at the top, that's where you have the actual apps that you and I see and use every day.
Okay, so how do you actually talk to all those layers? How do you connect to the cake? Well, for most web developers, your main tool is going to be a JavaScript library. The OG was Web3.js, but today, a super popular and really powerful one is called Ethers.js.
Ethers.js basically breaks things down into 3 main ideas for you. First up is the provider. The easiest way to think about this is it's your read-only connection to the blockchain. It's the reader. It lets you just ask questions like, hey, what's the balance of this account? Or what's the latest block number? Simple as that.
Next up, you've got the contract object. This is the rulebook. It represents a very specific smart contract that's already living out there on the blockchain. And what's cool is this object makes it feel like you're just calling functions on a normal piece of JavaScript in your own code. It's super seamless.
And last, but honestly, this is the most important one, the signer. The signer is the key. See, the provider can only read stuff. The signer is an actual account that can approve transactions and write new information to the blockchain. Anytime you want to change something on the network, it needs a signature from a signer. And that's what costs gas, the transaction fees.
Okay, cool. We've gone over the big picture architecture and the main tools. So, what's the very first practical step for a developer who wants to get their hands dirty? It all boils down to one thing: making that connection to the network.
And honestly, you only need 3 things to get going. You need to have Node.js installed on your machine. You need to pick a JavaScript library like Ethers.js. And the big one, you need access to an Ethereum node. That node is your doorway to the entire decentralized world.
Now, here's the good news. You don't have to go out and set up your own physical computer to be a node. That's a lot of work. Most developers just use a service called a node provider. And as you can see from this little chart, which one you pick really just depends on what you need. If you're a developer who wants powerful tools, you might go with Alchemy or QuickNode. If your main priority is decentralization, you look at something like Pocket Network. And hey, if you're just starting and don't want to spend money, providers like Infura have awesome free plans to get you started.
So, when you boil it all down, it comes to this fundamental concept. Once you're connected to a node, every single thing you do falls into one of 2 buckets. Reading information from the blockchain? Totally free. Your node just fetches the answer for you. But if you want to write information, if you want to change anything on the blockchain, that is a cost. That needs a signed transaction from a signer, and that's when you pay those gas fees.
And really, that's the whole model right there. You've got a decentralized backend that's open for anyone to use, with really clear rules about reading and writing data. We've basically just walked through the entire blueprint, from the big idea all the way down to a developer's first steps. So, the only real question left is, now that you know the blueprint, what are you going to build?